Joining us this morning, he is a political scientist. He has worked in the media before. He's a man who speaks his mind, and he's also head of the Center for European Studies at the University of Ghana. His name, Dr. Kwame Asante. He joins the conversation. Doc, good morning.
Good morning, Ben, and good morning, Sweetie, and good morning to our viewers.
All right, Sweetie.
Doc, it's good to have you. So you have your minute or two to take us through what's on your mind this morning.
Right. I want to look at a statement by Professor Michael Quay that the people of this country owe the human rights they are enjoying to the NPP, and that if they want any party that will serve that interest, then it is the NPP. All right. I have a reflection on that, and I want to talk about it briefly.
Okay.
I must say that Professor Michael Quay was my teacher, level 200, 300, and I must say here, without a doubt, that he was such a great teacher, and he taught us very well. There are a lot of things I do today relative to Ghanaian politics that I learned under his feet, and I have no doubt in my mind that he continues to be one of my best teachers. That is a fact. But that aside, I will look at what he said, and it's born out of some of the things he taught us, including the same subjects, which have over the years also built capacity on, and I want to speak on that. The statement he made is partly correct, but there is an aspect that he shoved under the carpet, which I want to bring to the fore. It is true that under Nkrumah, there were some human rights violations that were committed. And that is true with all succeeding or subsequent governments from 1966 up to today. That is also a fact. The issue of human rights violations, particularly under the PDA, the Preventive Detention Act, was a sorry story, to say the least. People were put into prison without trial. It started 1960, and 58, and it was 5 years in jail without trial. If the state found you as somebody who was a threat to the state, you could be languishing in jail without trial. They amended it in 1964 and extended it to what? Another 5 years.
Right.
Detention without trial. It is that type of, exercise that brought the unfortunate incident that Dankwa was detained and he died in prison. Very, very unfortunate story. Very, very. A number of people were incarcerated without trial, and we know that it is a fact. That aside, if you look at the regimes that followed Nkrumah, and I'm looking at those that gravitate towards the Dankwa-Buzia tradition, whether military and civilian, but I'll start with the military. If you look at the National Liberation Council, which was led by Ankara, later led by Afrifa, that regime also did what they accused Nkrumah of, the very crime that they accused Nkrumah of, committing the same crime. There were a number of people Nkrumah had imprisoned due to what? Preventive Detention Act. As they were released from prison because there was a new regime, at the same time, the government also was putting into jail people they found as threats to the NLC. And they came out with a law called the Protective Custody Act. Protective Custody Act. That law also enabled the NLC to imprison people that they found threats to the regime. So why was my professor also hiding that one from the people? I thought that the good old professor would bring the balance sheet. That's one of his expressions in class, the balance sheet, the pluses and the minuses, so that we'll be able to know that, yes, some also occurred under that tradition.
Right.
In fact, Beyond that, there was somebody who was a loyalist to Kwame Nkrumah. He was called Boy Moses. He was put in a cage, dragged on the street of Accra. If you look at this, what type of, gory tale would this be? It's the highest in human rights violation that you can see. But you see, beyond that, if you look at even the Fourth Republic, all regimes have committed human rights one way or the other. And I will urge everybody to Google and look at the State Department report on human rights, the U.S. State Department report on human rights. There are gory tales of human rights violations even under the Fourth Republic. And the regimes that have tasted power in the Fourth Republic are guilty of that. They have their fair share of these violations. So I want to believe that when we are looking at the political history of this country, I believe that we should bring the balance sheet, the pluses, the minuses, and all that, so that we'll be able to sift in between them and then make a realistic a decision on them. But where you talk about some and you leave the rest, then it becomes an incomplete record. So on this note, I want to set the record straight by telling my prof that the things that he told me, I am bringing them to the fore.
Okay.
We are interested in dealing with human rights and all that, but we should not lose sight on the fact that our forebears worked and tried to help us to build a country we call our own, a country which is a just country, a country where there will be peace, freedom, justice, and all that. So this should occupy our attention so that it doesn't matter whether one group protected human rights the best than other. All that we need to do is that even one human right violation, we must know that it is bad enough to soil our reputation, and we need to safeguard that.
I will just add this little bit in some 30 seconds that I was also taken aback by Professor Michael Quay in the sense that, like you rightly pointed out, no regime, no administration has been free of human rights abuses. Nkrumah, and one thing I always say that people should pay attention to, Nkrumah became paranoid on the back of certain activities, all the way from the 50s. In fact, I remember Corporal Ametewe incident. Direct gunfire at him. The bombing in Kulungugu. You had over 5 assassination attempts against the man. It would make anybody paranoid. So we all talk about the PDA, the Preventive Detention Act. It was bad and all of that. Something led the man there. And I'm wondering if those things had happened to any of our presidents in the Fourth Republic, how they would have reacted. In any case, and this is a case I'm going to make forcefully as one of my points of discussion on Friday in my blunt thoughts. 8 people died in election 2020. Human rights? You had law students go on the street. Law students go on the street to demonstrate. They were hit with water cannons, pepper spray. They were lashed. Human rights? Please. Let's. I mean, if certain attempts are made to paint certain things in a certain way, it's egregious. But I'll leave it there.
Ben,
on Friday, I'll have a proper take on these matters.
Yeah, this is just a quick one. Your position that Nkrumah, did what it did because of certain...
I'm not saying solely, but it led him there.
Yes, because of certain situations. That one I also disagree. Because, look, the fact that there were assassination attempts on your life and all that, you could not detain people without trial. That I fundamentally
agreed. Per the law, it wasn't right. But he made it legal. He made it legal.
Yeah, if you look at Nkrumah's background, Nkrumah said that the political system in the Gold Coast was very corrupt. And for that matter, he wanted to go and study in the United States. He went there, studied there. He learned all those things. So you can't come to Ghana and implement that type of rule, draconian and all that.
Right.
People's rights must be given to them. Rights are those conditions that enable people to develop to become the best of themselves. So I believe that even it doesn't matter how egregious is the offense, give people a hearing so that they can defend themselves. That is where I find it problematic. But apart from that, all the regimes have also negative reports relative to the way they govern. from day one up to date.
Doc, I agree with you, but all I'm saying is you can't pick and choose between these and act as though someone did worse when you have your own record. But let's get into the papers now.
Thank you for those insightful thoughts. Let me start with the Daily Guide newspaper. On the front page, our preserved traditions, customs. That is according to Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. National security justifies 6 million Ghana cedis Bawku budget. And 3 hack bishop jailed for contempt. Nana calls for Gulf of Guinea Commission review. And 450 MSMEs get YouStart support. Let's start with the story of the National Security Minister defending the 6 million budget for Bawku. And the Ministry of National Security has responded to criticism over its monthly budget of 6 million Ghana cedis for operations in Bawku, describing remarks by the Member of Parliament for the area, Mahama Ayariga, as unfortunate and mistaken. The ministry emphasized that the funds are part of its general operations budget and are crucial for maintaining peace in Bawku, despite alternative uses such as enhancing Ghana's resilience against security threats like terrorism and violent extremism spreading across West Africa. And this is in response to Mr. Ayariga's questioning what the 6 million Ghana cedis budget is really going to do. And the National Security Minister is saying that the situation in Bawku is still a very sensitive one, and so that's what the money is for. Government kicks off regional accountability tour. Nana calls for Gulf of Guinea Commission review. Kalabule shenanigans, that is an editorial here. And then to JDM, why run away from debating a liar? Hopefully we get the chance to have both flag bearers on one stage and understand what they are proposing for this country. Bank of Ghana sanctions 245 businesses for issuing debt checks. Let me get into the story a bit. The Bank of Ghana has imposed sanctions on 245 business entities and some 47 individuals for issuing debt checks. A statement from the BOG on August 5th said the individuals and the entities breached a notice which was published on March 2021. Quote, the affected bank customers issued debt checks on at least 3 occasions between January 2022 and January 2024, despite warnings about the consequences of these actions. Away from that, 1 million youth to acquire digital skills for jobs. It's a Daily Guide report. Tomato prices drop. Really? Prices of tomatoes at the Agbogloshi market in Accra have suddenly dropped after months of upward trend. This is because tomatoes are now in season and there are many available as retailers and consumers are happy about the lower prices. A report by local radio station City FM indicates that tomato sellers can now buy tomatoes at a lower price and sell them to customers at a lower price. I'll go to the market later today and check for myself. A Dapaah book riddled with falsehood, that is according to the NPP, and judiciary working on expanding infrastructure. In sports, a Free April Press starts unity campaign, and on the back page of the Daily Guide newspaper, Ghana face Angola, Niger in AFCON qualifiers. I thought Jamaican was winner, that is according to Noah Lyles, and Paris swimming cancelled over pollution. Man U will take more risks next season, that is according to Andre Onana. These stories all coming from the Daily Guide newspaper. For your reflections, Doc.
Right. Thank you for the opportunity. Let me look at the 6 million national security budget, which the minister is justifying. Why are we having a banter on this? It is a common practice that we have heard and known in this country that issue of national security is not under scrutiny. If that is anything to go by, you ask yourself, so at what point do we have to scrutinize? If now MPs in Parliament are scrutinizing the national security budget, there's nothing wrong with that. It is part of the oversight responsibility of Parliament. Parliament, apart from other roles, one of its important roles is to serve as an oversight on government executive actions and inactions. So any budget prepared by the state or any of the executive institutions under executive should come under strict scrutiny of Parliament. So when they ask this thing, I think the question is legitimate. It is the duty of the minister, which is who is the spending officer, to be able to justify why we need that. right? Or why we need that amount of quantum of money. So when he's able to provide the figures right, I think there should not be any problem. But this tells us, I'm sure the MP was worried about the quantum of money and all that. It tells us that, look, war is expensive. War is expensive. We should not get there. Look at the money we could use to develop a country. Now we are using it to maintain peace.
Yeah.
Why? So in spite of our differences, at a point in time, we must be able to smoke peace pipe and allow peace to prevail in whatever areas we find ourselves. If we continue to have war, and that are not we are not able to handle them, at the end of the day, we are going to spend more than this. So yes, much as I want to be in the shoes of the MP, all of us should reflect on the fact that war is expensive and that when you start it, you find it difficult to end.
Right.
And then the security also owe this country a duty to protect, and it will call for money. How do we balance that? So I believe that we should look at all these things and then also make sure that we have value for money. Shouldn't be the case that, yes, because there's a problem and that the bills are too much for us to bear. But I am sure that all these things are subject of scrutiny. And once we get the basis right, I don't think we should have a problem. But the main problem is that let us deal with war once and for all. And we will not be able to, we will not get into a position of spending serious money that we can use for development.
All right.
A quick reaction to that, just an add-on. War is expensive. Interestingly, in the African context, corruption is even more expensive. If you look at the devastation of war in the pockets of countries that it is prevalent in on the continent, it is very expensive. I've been in wars before, so I know. And Liberia is still reeling. It has never gone back to what it was. But if you look at the cost of corruption on the continent, corruption is more expensive, which is why we need to look into those sums of money. Every little drop. Look at even Ghana, even per what our finance ministry has been telling us, anything between 4 and 6 billion. And that is how many years ago? So imagine how much we lose to corruption maybe by now, every year. If you add those, trust me, corruption is more expensive than war. So let's deal with the corruption as well.
I agree. And that's why I'm saying that we should ensure value for money. If we ensure value for money, there will not be any corruption and we'll be able to save. I'll urge you to read a book written by one British scholar, and it's titled The Bottom Billion. It gives you an idea that if you go into war, the kind of underdevelopment you are going to experience. He gives certain years, that in certain years, you will spend about 20 years, 50 years before you develop. So don't start. You'll find it difficult to end. I urge everybody to read the book, The Bottom Billion.
All right, let's get into your paper now, Ben.
Well, let's do the Daily Graphic newspaper. Economic growth favors the rich. ISA demands income redistribution, something I'm passionate about. Resist photocopying of Ghana card for transactions. Margins Group CEO says so. Graphic WFP hold technical stakeholders breakfast meeting today. Then there's 2020 election violence. Shraj hands tied. Human rights body calls for expedited court cases. And then amend NHIA Act for efficient NHIS. Dr. Abuaji Da Costa says so. Chief Justice launches small claims debt recovery courts and constant electricity supply, my priority. That's according to Herbert Crapper. Let's quickly get into these stories. The country's economic figures stand in sharp contrast with the daily economic hardships faced by citizens, the Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research has observed. It said although the country's total income distributed per person, also known as per capita income, had increased by $386 from the $1,979 in 2016 to $2,365 in 2023, the Institute is of the view that widespread inequality remains. In a report after its assessment of the mid-year budget review, the Institute, which researches into social and economic issues, said in spite of the positive economic outlook, anecdotal evidence from studies such as the Afrobarometer surveys in the first quarter of the year suggested growing hardship due to an increased price of food, increased transport fares, and rising fuel and cement prices. It goes on, but it tells the story of what we all know. It talks about debt management, among others. We like talking loftily, I should say, about the macro economy and these gains and all of that. Usually it is only a certain bracket of people you see benefiting from that. How about the micro economy? How does it get into your pocket, my pocket? Cost of utilities, cost of cement, cost of water, cost of food. That's the question. So it's a good thing to hear that tomato prices are falling, for example. But what is the rest of the ripple effect? Page 20 is my next. Maybe I should go to page 13 before I get to page 20 on that Shraj bit. The Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice has ruled that it lacks the power to investigate the 2020 electoral violence, which I was just citing, which claimed 8 lives because similar cases were already pending before the law courts. In a report dated June 13, 2023, Shraj said Article 219 of the 1992 Constitution barred it from investigating matters which were pending before the courts, while its enabling law, the Shraj Act's 1993, Act 456, also did not clothe it with such powers. I guess time for us to look at some of these. Then amend NHIA Act for Efficient NHI, as Dr. Abuaje, the CEO of the NHIA, has called for the amendment of the National Health Insurance Authority Act to ensure the immediate release of National Health Insurance levy proceeds to the scheme. Oftentimes, you would have the Finance Ministry, other agencies dilly-dallying with money that must go there for them to also do their work. That's the thrust of that bit. I'll end on page 20, and then you can come in, Doc, with that final story. Resist photocopying of Ghana card for transactions. So Ghanaians have been urged to resist attempts by any institution to photocopy their Ghana card for transactions. Rather, they should insist that the institutions verify the cards as prescribed by the National Identification Authority regulation. It goes on, but that's the thrust of it. And you go to certain places, and indeed, they want to photocopy. I was somewhere yesterday, they took the card, and then they took my thumbprint. So no photocopy, at least I didn't see that. But the banks and others, I think this is something we ought to look into, because who knows what can be done with your information. Over to you, Doc.
Yeah, I think there was one story that I left out. I want to bring to the fore. Prices of tomato dropped, and we are happy. It is a very shameful thing to us. All of us must bow our heads in shame. Why am I saying this? We are here. Arable lands available. We are here. This is a country that whose mainstay is agriculture, and we go to a desert area to look for what tomatoes to buy from Burkina Faso. Is it not shameful? Very, very. Everywhere in Ghana, almost everywhere, when you plant tomatoes, it will grow. What are we doing to ourselves here? What are we doing to ourselves here? We have not taken agriculture seriously at all. And that has brought us this far. If we are serious about this, we will not be happy that, prices are falling and all that. The farmers who produce this, what benefit do they get? They produce and they get rotting, and there's no effort to deal with this. Who's harvest losses? You are still experiencing this. Where is the tomato factories that we are looking forward to under 1D1F? Governments have, over the years, taken the trouble to walk us through the path of slogans and all that, which do not bring anything to us. The people of this country should look sharp and make sure that this time, any promise that you want to give, we will interrogate them and make sure that we get the fair share of the bargain, all right? So that we earn what means of livelihood. What is happening here? Tomatoes. I think we'll reflect on that. Let's look at the economic growth that favors the rich. Very, 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 very unfortunate. If you have listened to or read the literature about, protests in this country and all that years ago and all that, one of the reasons was that the rich were getting richer, the poor getting poorer. So there was the need to change the status quo and make sure that we get the best for ourselves. And that's all these things give birth to the 1992 Constitution that we have, that will make sure that people will bridge this gap and create equal opportunity for everybody. Why are we having this anomaly? It tells you that holders of political power have taken us for granted. And we have glorified that situation by not punishing them when we go to the polls. We glorify them, and then in the name of tradition, in the name of what? Ethnicity, in the name of religion, and the rest of them. It doesn't help anybody. Here we are. You are living in a country that the poor is getting poorer, the rich is getting richer. What kind of injustice is this? I think that going into this election, we should move away from what tradition, from ethnicity and religion, and vote and make sure that we get the best. If you read Dan and Co., they said, if you're a rational voter, you vote based on the things that you derive from what? That electoral exercise.
Right.
I think Ghanaians should wake up and look at that. The issue of what? Shraj and the killing of the 8 people, right? They say they don't have mandates and all that. But where do we go from here? I want the lawyers to help us. Up to date, I do not understand why people who are prepared to be part of the political process to take a decision that will stand the test of time will be shot at the polls. Very, very unfortunate. And up to date, as if it's normal. Let us remember that even if you lose one person, it is bad enough to undermine the fortunes of the elections. And when we say free and fair election, people do not have the meaning. And I want to state here, free and fair election is one of the elections where it is devoid of what? Irregularities. And that, at the end of the day, the political actors who contest for the election, they accept defeat and abide by the rules of the game. So when you go for election and people are shot and killed, it is an aberration. It is one of the wrong things associated with what election, and it undermines the free and fair nature of every election. We should stay away from this. We want political parties to convince us today, and want the government to also assure us that we are not going to have a recurrence of this ugly scene. We are not going to take that, and we have to make sure that we nip this type of evils from our political process.
Well, thank you for those thoughts. Sweetie, you know what's interesting?
No.
In civilized societies, the rich are willing to pay more for the poor to get better. You go to a place like Norway, and it's not just them. They have a fund, very futuristic fund. They are not even just thinking of themselves. They are thinking of the future. Here, we destroy the future in the present.
And Doc's submission just brought to mind Charles Darwin's opening for A Tale of Two Cities. So it's the worst of time for the poor people, and it's the best of time for the rich people. Let's see where that
was the best of times, it was the worst of
times. And so it's like two different realities. We live in the same country, and nobody is caring about how the other party is, making any headway. Let me quickly run through the Ghanaian Times newspaper. On the front page, at Maiden Town Hall meeting in Accra, government told economy's recovery says, despite challenges, economy grows by $20 billion. Inflation drops from 54% in 2022 to 22% as of June 2024. I'll get into that story briefly. Uphold principles of founding fathers to propel national growth and development, according to Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. And on election 2024 campaign, I'll consider Kusau region, that is according to Mahama, and government bans lease of public lands by public institutions. Let's do the story about the former president considering a new region. And the former president, the flag bearer of the NDC, says that he would consider the request to carve a region out of the Upper East region if he wins the election. And the suggested Kusag region, which will consist of Bawku, Pusiga, Zebila, Garu, Tempani, and Binduri. He says that this is to enable them meet the constitutional threshold or population of the area. Because of the security reasons, it will allow security personnel to have a more targeted or focused approach to dealing with the issues of the area if it's carved out of the Upper East region. And then government touts economy's recovery, says despite challenges, economy grows by $20 billion. Inflation drops from 54% to 22%. And I just want to quote some of the things that he said. Comparing figures, speaking during the Greater Accra Regional Edition in Accra yesterday of the Ghana National Association of Teachers, the Finance Minister, Dr. Mohamed Amin Adam, said the size of the economy, despite the challenges, had grown by $20 billion under the current administration. And comparing same with that of 2013, he said, under Mohamed's administration, the size of the economy was pegged at $64 billion. However, this reduced to $56 billion in 2016. And as of 2023, the size of Ghana's economy was pegged at $76 billion. And so in nominal terms, the economy has grown by $20 billion under the Akufo-Addo regime. I don't know if that reflects in our pockets, but that's what he says. And then let me do this last story about government banning the lease of public lands by institutions and individuals. Cabinet has directed that no public institution or individual can lease, transfer, or change the use of public lands without written permission from the President through the Minister of Lands and Natural Resources. Quote, the general public is advised not to be a party to any such transaction in respect of public lands without the prior written approval of the President of the Republic, given through the Minister responsible for lands and natural resources. He said in a statement that was cautioning the public institutions to be aware of leasing or participating in this thing that they're calling a crime now. Doc, your thoughts?
Yes. I'll look at economic recovery that the minister is talking about and is so happy. But my question to him is that at what cost? Yes, we are getting so much in terms of what the growth of the economy, $20 billion and the rest of. At what cost? At the cost that you and I, we are not ready to go to IMF. And they've taken us there. Is that what we are interested in? That we, after independence, that after gaining political independence, Nkrumah cautioned us that we should look forward to build what? A solid economy. Because there is a new colonialism in his book, the last stage of what? Imperialism. Yeah. Is it not where we are now? We've thrown away. We bent all Nkrumah books and demolished his statute and all that. Here we are. Nkrumah continue to live. If you look at what cost, where people are having haircuts, what is their offense? When they have what? Giving their money to the state to manage on behalf of all of us, so that the little that they are required by law to be given to them, you deny them. And then you are taking them what? You give it, instead of that, you give them what? Haircuts. Is that what we should be proud of? At what cost? Look at today. The economic conditions of the country. So hard that you struggle to make ends meet. Is that what we should be happy about? Figures do not reflect what is in our pocket and what is on our tables. It's not. The real economics is bread and butter issue. They should go out there and find out what the ordinary man is going through.
All right.
So banding figures around will not help anybody. The stark reality is that we are in difficult times and that we are not going to accept that.
Okay.
The issue of public lands. And we have seen in this country, we have beautiful law that says that the state can acquire state public lands and use it for public purposes. What are we seeing today? The lands that the state have acquired from people with the hope that they will use for what? Something for this, the general people. They come to office and then sell them to themselves. That is very insulting and very demeaning. You think that those who give lands do not have what? Conscience. They don't know the economics of the market, that they could sell on their own. We've taken them, and then all that we can do is that when we are leaving office, we sell to them, we give to cronies and pals and all that, and there is nothing. Now that you are issuing this statement, it's coming too late. We have done so much, but I know that better late than never. But we want the government to walk the talk, so that by the time, one day when they leave office, we don't want to see and hear that there is a state land which was sold to a minister or any of government appointees or assigned. That would be unfortunate. We need to walk the talk. And people must be vigilant. People like this, anybody who come into that space to abuse our right in there, when we get opportunity to change that person from power or not deny the person opportunity to have access to power, we should do so without glorifying them.
So better late than never, but this ban, let's see how it's implemented. Benjamin, any more papers?
I'll just do quickly Republic Press. Ayariga can Dapaah face off over 6 million Ghana cedi Bawku piece cash. Finance Minister begs for forgiveness, blames hardships on DDEP. And Ghanaians will get 100% internet coverage when I become president. That's according to Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. There's also Professor Opoku Agyemang calls on voters to reject NPP's vote-buying tactics and release funds for the completion of projects packed to the Ministry of Finance. Yesterday, Doc, we spoke about this whole bit about forgiveness, and I made the point that sometimes when you ask for forgiveness, it's not because you want to win the person's favor, not because you actually expect that things will change. Maybe the person will still cut you off and something, but you're doing it because it's the right thing to do. What I've heard the Attorney General say certain things. I've heard the Finance Minister also weighed into that. The Attorney General saying, oh, they don't want to break the 8 for selfish reasons. Okay, that's all good, but don't act like we owe you. You owe us, you failed to pay. The Finance Minister references the DDEP and the people suffering. Have they changed their stance? Do they feel any better? I know people who lost up to about 60% of their investments. How will those people feel? What has been the impact on the economy? And will the economy, in the words of Kweku Kwarteng, will it change from being run like a Ponzi scheme? Those are questions we ought to ask. Ghanaians will get 100% internet coverage. I guess the promises continue. Your reflections, Doc.
I'll look at the Minister of Finance begging for forgiveness. It is a good thing that when you know you have wronged a people on your own accord, not at the instance of somebody, you go out there and apologize. It's normal. It's a virtue. Aristotle, the greatest of all, gave us that there are virtues in politics, and this is one of them. Apology is good. But you see, you must confess your sins before apology can be accepted. What crime have they committed? We want that graphical detail. We want that. It shouldn't be a blanket. Those of you who are members of the church, all right, if you want to confess or what you want to render apology, you confess your sins, and your sins will be forgiven you based on the confession you have made. We have said so many things that are wrong in this economy. Which of them can they attribute to their own doing without making reference to Russia, Ukraine? They should come clean on that. Yes, we want to accept the apology, but confess your sins. Know that I did this I shouldn't have done, and for that reason, please forgive me on that. That is where I would say that then you are remorseful. And one caution to them is that you can also say that you are sorry and continue to repeat the very things that you say you are sorry about. Then it becomes meaningless. And my little boy, my son, one day, 7 years, told his senior brother 10 years, that Kweku, don't say sorry to me. Stop doing what you are supposed to do. Stop doing what will allow you to say sorry. In other words, don't do the things that will lead you to say sorry. Stop it, and you don't say sorry. I learned a lot from that boy. I said, wow. Let them fix the problems that have taken them to that level of saying sorry.
Prevention is better
and
than
let
cure.
us also remember that sorry doesn't fix any problem. Fix the problem, and you don't say sorry.
Right. So on that note, we have to wrap up. Benjamin, do you have any other papers?
Oh, just the headline. The Accra Times, the Dapaah document. Mahama throws Akufo-Addo's denial into the gutters, urges Ghanaian youth to help NDC send NPP packing on December 7th. You know something I found really interesting about that document? I don't want us to dwell on it because our time is up, but the rejection versus the actualization of some of the things in there are shocking. Whoever put this together, especially as now the claim is that the person was from the opposition or the other side, I don't know whether that person was clairvoyant or something, but it appears to be a playbook, a singing sheet, hymn book, from which, but anyway, it is what it is.
Thank you for staying with us on the News Review segment.